I want to talk a bit about off-centered. Now, I find this discussion very interesting between the four of you. So, firstly, like what you mentioned, it's yourself, it's Neil, Michael Ham, and Flipping Steve. Right now, I watch. Of course, I watch Neil. I still watch Neil regularly. I used to watch Flipping Steve, and I watch your channel as well. What I find, number one, is the dynamics between the four of you. You're four very different kind of personalities, right? The way that you communicate, the way that you guys, I find it a bit different. So tell me about the dynamics, right? Tell me about how do you four come together, being very different and all.
I would say YouTube brought us together because if you look back, I mean, we all kind of started out around the same time. I don't know when Michael Ham started his channel, but it was still around the same time. And I met him, I believe, at the first national that I went to in 2021, I think, is when I met him in person. But Michael Ham was always a prolific commenter on the videos. He was always commenting, and always very supportive. Michael Ham was. He's a great guy, too. But Neo was somebody that popped up. I mean, you remember this, going back to 2020. Now there's a zillion channels out there. There's a zillion content creators. In 2020, there was not. In 2020, there was not that many. And that's how I think, myself, Neo, Flip and Steve were able to grow quicker, is just because there wasn't a lot of options out there for people, good, bad, or indifferent. But that's how I learned of Neo, was through YouTube, watching his YouTube. And then I don't remember the first time I met him in person, if it was at a national or if it was at a different card show. But it was something where we had connected with each other. Hey, I watch your channel, you watch my channel. And I don't remember exactly kind of how we met. It's been so long now. I can't remember the first time. Flipping Steve, the first time I met Flipping Steve in person was the Dallas Card Show 2021. It was in April, May of 2021, I believe. That was the first time I met him in person. But we had been on live streams together for about a year. So we had known each other for a while, but that was the first time we had met in person at that Dallas Card Show. And so ever since, we've been going to the national, meeting up, hanging out. I also went to the Philly Card Show, and Steve lives in Delaware, so that's a 2-hour drive from Delaware, or from where he is. So, I've been to his house. He's been to my house, met my family. So how we all met was YouTube, and just having like-minded. We were all talking about cards, and YouTube brought us together, and then we stayed in touch. Michael Ham lives in Tampa, Florida, and my dad lives in Tampa. So I've got family down there. I went to high school in Tampa. So I go down there, I wouldn't say a lot, but I go down there 2 or 3 times a year, and then sometimes I'm able to meet up with him. So yeah, no, it's good. We've just kind of developed a friendship, over time, and it's stuck.
Cool, man. Cool. I mean, there isn't on that particular bi-weekly get together, right? There isn't a specific topic that you guys actually talk about, but you get this fireside chat kind of vibe, right? And then what I find interesting is that suddenly you have Flipping Steve just start to ramble about something, and then you all go in the direction.
We got to,
and then you would say something, and then all you will go to that direction. So I find that pretty interesting for a podcast. Sometimes podcasts can be a bit more serious, where we have a certain topic that we want to discuss, we want to debate or whatever. But you guys just get on at a certain time of the day and then just decide to ramble about what's going on, as though that you was like you said, sitting down together, guys get together maybe over a couple of beers, and they just go off of what's happening in the hobby.
Yeah, that show, it's kind of selfish how we run that one, because it is more of just us hanging out and less of having a structured show. So if you're a viewer, it could be boring for certain viewers, because it could be like, what is this? But it's just the guys hanging out. It's not meant to be, all right, here are the 5 topics we're going to touch on tonight. This last one a couple days ago, we did talk about current events. We do try to wrap in current events, so it's not as if we have just no plan usually, but there are some weeks where it's a slow news week or something. There's not a whole lot to talk about. Over the last few weeks, we've had a lot going on hobby-wise, news-wise, so there's been more to talk about. But yeah, for the most part, that's just us just being able to hang out, and then able to connect with viewers too, if the ones that want to watch it, that want to hang out with us. So that's awesome always.
Nice. I asked Jeremy Lee on this because he runs, live streams as well, and I asked him, has he ever encountered any dramas with, potential people on the chat or even his guests? And he said, no, usually it's cool, everything's under control. So for you guys, four of you coming from different backgrounds, has there been ever a little bit of a banter that kind of like you disagree with one another, and what were they about?
Have the four of us disagreed about anything in particular?
Yep.
Like Neo and I will disagree on. We'll have a lot of times we'll have. I shouldn't say a lot of times. Sometimes we have differing takes on what's going on. The four of us do actually. So, but I say Neo because he creates about as much content as I do, whereas Steve and Ham, they do videos every now and again. But I would say, so like about grading, different things about grading companies. We might disagree about like. If I say, oh, I'm going to prospect on this guy or that, this thing or that thing, they might say, oh, that's crazy. I wouldn't do that. Or, so we might disagree on that sort of stuff. But for the most part, I think that, these guys too, we have different personalities, but everybody's pretty even keel though. Like we're fairly laid back, all four of us. I'm not super high strung or high maintenance, and I don't know if I could hang around people that are. So I think that's part of what makes that work too. I know that's going to sound kind of like a lame answer, but we haven't had any blowout disagreements over the last 5 years. We might disagree on things, it might get a little heated between like, I have an opinion on a hobby thing versus somebody else's, but for the most part, like, it's not as if one of those, like we've never done anything to each other, like a weird, like a deal that went sideways or something like to where we're upset with each other. It just hasn't happened. I will say though, we almost had, so here's something that could have been a problem. We were at the Atlantic City National and Flippin' Steve asked me to hold one of his cases. He had a big case that he brought and he had like a smaller case. And I was like, no problem, because he was carrying the big one and I didn't have anything. So I'm like, yeah, I can hold the small one. So I go to grab food and I put the case up and I went to go pay and I walked away with my food and I left his case sitting there at the register. And I walked away and he's like, hey, Dustin, where's my case? And I was like, oh my God, I ran back. And it's a black little Pelican case that looks like 1,000 other ones that are in there. If someone could have very easily just grabbed it, walked away. But fortunately the case was sitting there, but there was probably, I don't know, $10,000 of cards in that case. So, that might have been, I told him, I'm like, that would have been a friendship ender. And he's like, no, it would have been all right. But yeah. So that was a moment where it could have gone bad, but it didn't.